Alex Pereira is the greatest addition in UFC history. Now, before you go down in the comments and go, what the hell are you talking about, man, and want to fight me on this, just hear me out, man. Listen, what Alex has done since he's been inside the UFC has been nothing shy of absolutely spectacular. But not only that, normally when we see a guy come over to the UFC and have some sort of exciting impact, it's a guy like Michael Chandler coming over from Bellator with an MMA background. It's Michael Venom Page, known for his flashy striking skills, coming over to the UFC from Bellator. It's usually a guy that is from another promotion in the MMA world. However, what we've seen a recent trend inside the UFC has been the signing of high-level strikers in Glory Kickboxing. We saw Israel Adesanya, who came over and became one of the biggest stars the UFC has ever had. But what Poatan has been able to do is nothing shy of spectacular. I mean, this man is very close to being the face of the UFC, if not already. You could make the argument. But let's talk about why I think he's the greatest addition in UFC history, other than the obvious, right? What we've seen from Poatan, a guy that comes over from Glory Kickboxing, which is, to me, is really impressive, like what Izzy has done. Because you know when you come over to the UFC and you have a striking background, the UFC is probably not going to throw you to the wolves. They're not going to give you necessarily bad stylistic matchups. They're going to give you guys that are known for their striking inside the UFC. They're not going to be world beaters, right away. They're going to slowly but gradually build you up and get you into those big fights. And what we saw from Israel Adesanya was that exact blueprint. So the UFC learned, look, we can take this flashy striker and Izzy, who has this incredible style, bring him over to the UFC, and that's what they did, and that was the blueprint. They used the exact same blueprint for Alex Pereira. The difference between the two is the aura, is the way and the fashion that they get things done. Because with Poatan, he not only just came over from Glory Kickboxing, this was a two-division, two-weight class world champion inside of Glory Kickboxing in the middleweight and light heavyweight division. And what he has done since he's came over to the UFC, we've seen the flashy knockouts. He goes out there in his debut against Andreas Mihailidis, gets taken down in the first round, then is able to get back to his feet, stay relatively safe, land a devastating flying knee that really put him on the map. I mean, Joe Rogan had been ranting and raving about Alex Pereira and couldn't wait for his debut and was kind of really building that up. And then we see him go out there against Bruno Silva in what was kind of a close fight at moments, where it was like, okay, is this guy as legit as we think? He's battling the weight cut. Then he goes out there against Sean Strickland, the starching left hook KO of Sean Strickland, where it's like, okay, we all know what's next. The big opportunity to take on Israel Adesanya, which fair play to Izzy and the UFC, because without Israel Adesanya and the star power that he had and the history between Izzy and Poatan, would we be looking at the same type of deal that we are now? I'm not so sure. Maybe we are, because he's still an incredible fighter, is Alex Pereira. This definitely fast-tracked him and gave him an advantage coming over to the UFC. However, goes out there, handles business against Sean Strickland. Then he goes out there and in his first ever 5-round fight in a main event, headlining MSG against Israel Adesanya. This is one of my favorite fights of all time, right? You get two high-level strikers, guys with history. It's got the bad blood. I mean, I feel like we haven't had a fight with like that much bad blood. I mean, the first fight between these two, it had the bad blood, the rivalry. Like it was like something out of a movie. And Poatan gets hurt. He faces adversity. He's down on the judges' scorecards, goes out there in the 5th round, lands a left hook, rocks Izzy, and is able to get him out of there and win the middleweight world title. Then fast forward, goes out there, UFC 287 against Israel Adesanya in the rematch. He's doing very well in the fight. Izzy kind of sets a trap for him and is able to brutally KO Alex Pereira. And that's kind of where everyone's like, does the hype stop? Is this where it's over? This is really where the story began for Alex Pereira inside the UFC. This man goes out there, moves up to heavyweight just a few months later. This guy gets starched by Israel Adesanya in the rematch inside of MMA. So it's technically 3-1 between the two. However, we don't know if we're going to get a trilogy. So what Alex Pereira does is, you know what? I'm going to move up to light heavyweight. I'm really struggling to make 185. Let me kind of disassociate myself from being attached to Izzy Adesanya. Let me move up a weight class. Takes on former champion Jan Blachowicz, who had Israel Adesanya's number. Jan Blachowicz wins the belt against Dominic Reyes, or it was a vacant title, goes out there, wins the title, defends it against Izzy Adesanya. They sent Adesanya up there to try and take away the belt from Jan Blachowicz, right? Not only would that have made Izzy a double champ, but also it would have taken the belt off of, and no offense to a boring Jan Blachowicz who's not going to sell pay-per-views, but nonetheless is a very talented fighter. So Alex Pineda's light heavyweight debut, UFC 291 against Jan Blachowicz, goes out there, razor close fight. But we saw Pineda face some adversity that we haven't seen inside of his career in terms of the grappling, right? It was a very, very scary first round. You know, Jan Blachowicz was able to take his back, spent a majority of the round on his back, and seemed to have the edge over Alex Pineda. Then it comes out the second round. Alex starts landing some good shots. Nonetheless, Alex Pineda wins a very close decision over Jan Blachowicz. Then he goes out there against Jiri Prochazka for the vacant light heavyweight title. Again, headlining MSG because John Jones versus Stipe Miocic fell apart due to a John Jones injury. Alex Pineda goes out there in the second round and starches Jiri Prochazka, in which people were protesting this was an early stoppage. So then Alex Pineda takes some time, gets a little bit better, and then goes out there at UFC 300 to take on Jamal Hill, who vacated the title after beating Glover Teixeira because he suffered an Achilles injury. Fair play to Hill for not wanting to hold up the division, just like Jiri vacating the title. That's what's made light heavyweight kind of nice. Guys aren't just kind of stalling out the division. Poatan goes out there at UFC 300 against Jamal Hill, starches him with a nasty left hook, sleeps him with damn near two knuckles, for God's sake. Then he goes out there, gives him the little celebration, look what I did to your man. Look, Jamal Hill was out there trying to get advice from Israel Adesanya on how to beat this man. Obviously, I don't know what advice he gave him, but it didn't work. So Alex Pineda gets the job done. And not only that, then he goes out there in the rematch on short notice at UFC 303 after Conor McGregor has an injury. Him and Michael Chandler's fight falls apart. They need a headliner. They need someone to save the card. 2-week notice. Jiri Prochazka, Alex Pineda step in. Pineda defends the light heavyweight title on short notice. I mean, when the hell does that happen? A champion step in and defend their title on short notice, goes out there, makes easy work of Jiri Prochazka, finishing him with a head kick, landing a nasty left hook at the end of the first round to put a serious hurting on Jiri Prochazka. But guys, the bottom line is, what Alex has done inside the UFC has been absolutely spectacular. He's now one of the faces, if not the face, of the UFC thus far. And one of the things that I want to add on as well, right? And if you've made it this far into the video, please comment Shama so I know that you're still watching. What I think goes under the radar and flies under the radar for me when it comes to Poatan. You see guys like an Israel Adesanya who seems to have a little bit of an edge to him, right? Which there's no problem with that, but the personality and the person that Poatan is, you could just tell this man has very high character. The people around him, the way he treats Glover Teixeira, the way he treats his longtime coach Paulinho Cruz, the way he treats the members at his gym. Yusri Belgaroy is a former rival of both Israel Adesanya and Alex Pineda. And him and Alex Pineda had a nasty rivalry inside Glory Kickboxing, and they buried the hatchet, and Yusri has been training side by side with Alex Pineda for the past few years, and he's getting ready to try to make his run inside of MMA as well. He has also even helped train former opponent Sean Strickland, and has also became very good friends with him while also cornering him at times. And it just shows and speaks to the character of Poatan. This man is not only just seems like a great human being, the aura, the scariness, the ferocious striking style, the way he treats his team, what he has meant to the UFC over the past only basically 2 years that he has been inside the UFC, becoming a two-weight world champion inside of Glory, inside of the UFC. I think it's safe to say that Alex Pineda just might be the greatest addition in UFC history.